I should at least define that when we say we invest exclusively in women-led companies, that means to us, just like you said, at least one full-time woman is on that founding or C-suite executive team who has strategic influence over the company and a significant ownership. It ends up that over 95%, I guess, of our companies have a woman CEO, but that's not a requirement. And so when I told you those numbers back in the day, the 1% of VCs making investment decisions was an estimate. It's really hard to tell, especially with all the sexual harassment scandals and kind of, attention that the venture capital funds were getting for not having any women made it so it was even harder to tell who were making investment decisions at these VC firms, because all of a sudden the titles were taken away from the photos, and admins and interns and stuff were posted on the websites. And so that was an estimate back then by the former president of the Kauffman Foundation that 1% of true investment decision makers in venture capital were women. It's really hard to get your hands on that number, but there was a study that came out in the end of 2020 called, I think it's just called Women in VC, and that actually really tried to get at that number and estimated that's 2.4% of VCs are women who are actually making investment decisions. So that number appears to have gone up if the 1% was accurate, but that was kind of like an estimate. So it's ridiculous, right? It's super low. It's 2.4%, we now know. In terms of the VC dollars going to women-led companies, back when we spoke, the number was 2.7%. Unfortunately, that one has gone down to 1.8% is the latest number from PitchBook. And at least PitchBook tracks it now. It was sort of something that was done on an annual basis. Now they're tracking it monthly, but it really sort of updates quarterly based on how VCs input their data in their in the PitchBook database. But it went down to 1.6% at the end of last year during COVID, and it's been hovering between 2 and 3% over the last decade. And the thinking of why it hit this all-time low and has just sort of barely creeped back up or started creeping back up, from 1.6 to like 1.8, if that's even statistically significant, is that already the VC ecosystem is so insular. It's sort of this cloaked industry of primarily, older white gentlemen in Silicon Valley who are deploying most of the capital, largely in profiles of people that look like them as well. And so with COVID, with people being on Zoom all day, it just the premise of the theory, I guess, behind why the numbers got worse for women is that people were just doing deals with people they already knew in their networks and weren't able to go out and meet new people at conferences and that sort of thing. So hopefully we'll see it get better as things open up again, but it really hasn't moved over the past decade. And I think it's just that the current venture capital ecosystem is just broken, because even when people were out and about going to conferences, venture capital investing is at the early stage is more of an art than a science. There's just not so much data to go on with businesses. And so it's sort of human nature that investors who are trying to reduce their risk in these risky investments are more comfortable doing investments with people they know, or people that are a familiar type of person, an industry that they are comfortable with. And so that's why we see like femtech and silver tech and these areas where healthcare in general, frankly, where women are making 80% of healthcare decisions. They're 78% of healthcare workers. They just see, women's health in, particular, or even aging parents-in-law. 80% of the daughters and daughters-in-law are the caretakers for the aging population in this country. So these are just markets, opportunities, problems that women see that the current investors in the VC ecosystem don't see.